In just a minute, I'm going to find my remote that I control the slides. Hey, can we put our hands together for the front row? They stole it. I confronted them. They denied it. And then they were overcome with guilt and they confessed. Hey, it's good. I'm sorry we had to start that way, but we're just trying to be transparent here. It's so good to be together. Happy New Year to you. It was a blast to spend Christmas Eve with so many of you, and we're going to jump into our new year with a very important conversation. It might feel a little bit like a trope or cliche, like digital detox. Oh no, the digital world and phones. And we all know it's problematic, but we all know, and we're all having these conversations, but we're going to slow way down and say, but what does this have to do with us? Our communities, our hopes, our dreams, our frustrations, our faith. And so I want to start with a bit of a poll. So I'd like you all to pull out your device if you have it and turn your flashlight on. If you don't know how to do that, ask somebody next to you. And it's a life-saving skill, so you do want to know how to use a flashlight on your device. Looks like this. Go ahead, shine it up so I can just see. All right, we're going to get a little interaction here and just see where we all line up. If you don't have your device, you're like, I'm not, just, you can raise your hand, okay? We get you're a conscientious objector to this whole thing. All right, so quick survey of the room. Put your light up if this is you. So bring your lights down. You're still on Christmas Eve mode right there. I like that. Okay, quick survey of the room. Do you prefer texting over an actual phone call? All right. Oh, this room's a little old-timey. I like that. Okay, how about this one? Have you ever gotten in bed, picked up your phone to do one quick thing, and then spent 30 minutes to an hour or more on it? Okay, good. Common company right there. Oh, I should say, attorney-client privilege applies right now, so everything you say is safe from the law, okay? Have you spent more time documenting an experience on your phone than being fully present in it? Has that happened to you from time to time? Okay, so sometimes. That's me. I love that some of you are like, this is stuff I've kind of battled. How about this one? Not a good one. Have you ever checked text or social media while driving? Yeah. Good news is you're better than the first service. Bad news is this one, I would say, public service announcement, we all just got to stop that one, okay? Have you disengaged from an in-person conversation because of a phone distraction? You're with someone and all of a sudden now you're on your phone. Does that happen to you recently? Okay. Do you experience separation anxiety when you accidentally leave your phone or lose your phone for a time? You kind of feel like, how am I going to get through the day? Anyone connect with that? It's interesting, isn't it? Has your phone usage been a topic of argument in your life, your house, your relationships? Has your phone usage been a topic of argument? I think almost, I'm not going to say what happened, but a teen just put their phone up and their mom put their hand down. I was like, oh no, you don't, not right now. Yeah, has your phone usage been a topic of argument in your household, in your life, in your relationships in some way? Okay, so it's interesting. Now, I want you to do this. I want you to turn your flashlight off so you're not this guy later on walking around and everyone's like, what? How old is he? What's he doing right now? So go ahead and turn your flashlight off. I think we're in good company to have this conversation today. It's a conversation about following Jesus in the world and the life that we live in. And I want to start by just giving you a question to dig into. It's the new year. Make a friend with someone you're sitting next to. Take about a minute. Do you have a love-hate, a love-love, or a hate-hate relationship with your phone? We'll be back in a minute, okay?
She's a black belt in karate, working for the city. She has to discipline her body, 'cause she knows that it's demanding to be free.
All right, take like 10 seconds. So full disclosure, just to begin this conversation that's going to be over the next 4 weeks, I'm not anti-technology. I might be even in like my vocation over technology. I'm preaching from an iPad. I have a smartwatch on. I have not the latest iPhone, but a newer iPhone in my pocket. I have a MacBook. I have a little AI recorder for my notes and things like that. Like, we're not going to have like a phone burning party. Now, in my Christian faith, that burning things was a big way you dealt with problems. When I was first introduced, I've shared this with this community, big Led Zeppelin fan, became a follower of Jesus, and everyone who was a follower of Jesus said, you can't listen to that, you gotta burn that. So I did the only thing that made sense. I burned all my Led Zeppelin. And then I was like, I miss Led Zeppelin. So I bought all my Led Zeppelin back. And then a little while later, I got more serious about my faith. So I burned all my Led Zeppelin again. You can see the financial process here is not a good one. Okay? Then, later on in my adult life, I was sitting on a little Christmas money from my mother-in-law, and I looked at my wife and I said, I think I'm gonna buy all my Led Zeppelin back. And so what I wanna make sure we don't do is look at this in really binary terms of good, bad, evil, great, burn, destroy, love, embrace. But we just slow down and we can say, look, we all engage with technology. This church uses technology for a lot of things. But I do believe that our screens, our devices, our phones, let's use these words all interchangeably, that they're a real threat to resilient living. Specifically, resilient discipleship, resilient following of Jesus. And I would say in my own life and the lives of many people I know, and those I know closer, I see this more clearly because I live, in and day out with them, is that this is a real challenge for us. That there might even be a lack of discernment in what we do and how we engage in an overdependence in this digital age and digital conversation. So to frame this, I'm going to put a lengthy quote up. Andy Crouch, who's been writing for a long time about culture, his most recent work has centered on technology. He's a Christian thinker. He brings a lot to the table. And Andy Crouch, he talks about this idea of the nudge. And if you could just agree with me, you don't have to, but if you could see some sense of this nudge is real, I live in it, the rest of the morning will make a lot of sense. In the TechWise family, this is what Andy says. He says, the world is nudging us for our attention and in a direction all the time. When we are in line at the grocery store and all the candy and magazines are in the checkout line, why do you think they put all the junk there? It's a nudge. The makers of our technological devices have become absolute masters at the nudge. Every notification that comes in on your smartphone is a nudge, something that makes it easier to stop whatever you're currently doing and divert your attention to your screen. Increasingly sophisticated algorithms help apps manage the number of nudges so you never get tired of responding to them. And the mere presence of your smartphone in your pocket is a nudge. You're just a tap away from countless rewards of information, entertainment, and distraction. So the question is whether those nudges are leading us to the life we actually want. And so maybe to condense that all down in the Christian faith, but really in all of mastery and practice, there's this term discipling. Screens are discipling us. They're forming us. They're shaping us. We are being formed and shaped. It was our whole fall conversation. And it's not the screen itself. It's the content. It's the interaction. It's how it works with us. It's forming us. And what we don't want to be, and I hope you don't, as an individual and in a community, is just passively formed by the things around you. Or even worse, actively formed by things that are malforming you. Another way to say that, again, is that just screens are forming us. So the nudge, the current of our culture, pulls us toward greater integration, deeper dependence, and constant distraction. So it would look like this. Let's talk about these three. Integration, and I'm going to set the stage here, and partway into this, you're going to go, this is like a bad TED Talk, okay? And so stay with me, because we're going to actually get to what does this have to do with our faith then? How do we live this out? And if you're asking questions or exploring what faith is, this is a human conversation. Every community, whatever discipline they're in, should be talking about this, because it's shaping the dinner table, the learning environment, how we interact, and how we don't. So integration, every aspect of our lives becomes enmeshed in technology and with technology and systems. It leaves little space for two very key human experiences, simplicity and solitude. Then, of course, dependence. It's a pretty straightforward word. We rely more on these external inputs for validation, for information, and for connection, which can cause us to lose touch with our inner self, with others, and with God. And then this is the low-hanging fruit, distraction. Constant distraction. It bombards us with noise and notifications that drown out the still small voice of the Spirit. Now, I shared these three this morning, and someone came up. They're retired. They're further along in their life, and they said, you left one out. I said, what is it? And they said, hiding. Hiding. Sorry, I said Heidi. That sounded weird. Said hiding. And I went, what do you mean? She said, well, it used to be books for me. I would hide in books. Like, I just didn't want to deal with certain things in life. And so that's okay. There is a space to, like, escape a bit, right? She said, but now I hide in my scroll, and for her, it's a news feed. She goes, I just hide in this because when I'm there, I get to disappear from all the real world stuff going on around me. That was someone who's retired and didn't grow up with a phone in their pocket. So this series, Digital Detox, it's a bit of an overstatement first. The detox isn't that simple. But it's a nudge in the opposite direction from the way technology is nudging us. And it allows us to ask a few questions. Like, is this the kind of life I truly want? It's a great technology question. Is this the kind of life I truly want? How is digital technology shaping me? And what does Jesus desire of my life instead? Now, there's an implication there. Those two cannot be just naturally the same thing. Technology is shaping us, and Jesus is saying, I am the one who should shape you. Now, they might intertwine at times, but how do they? How intentional is that? And so there's two goals, just be really overt up front. One is that we could resist as a community. If you're a guest with us, I'd love it if you'd hang around for 4 weeks and just suss out this conversation about digital life and faith and how community, how it all works together. But resist being formed by screens and become resilient followers of Jesus, just overtly. And then we could learn how to let our devices rest. But here's why. So we can be fully awake to God and to others. Now, I've wrestled. If you go to church here, you know I love to use memes all morning long, or reels all morning long in my sermons. And I'm like, can I do that in this series? Am I a hypocrite? I guess I am, okay? Because I came across this reel this week, and I'm like, this is the goal right here. So we're the monkey, okay? And technology is the snake. This is the relationship we should have. Keep that in mind. We're the monkey, technology is the snake. I mean, it's there. It's not going anywhere. It wants all your attention. You're going to engage with it, but on your terms. This is like my spirit animal for 2025. Now, he is not distracted by his technology. It's a visual for what we might have in store for us, what we can lean into, what many of us, and here's the thing, the data's telling us we all want this. We know we have a challenge in front of us, or someone we love has this challenge, or people we work with, or people we teach, or like we know we have this challenge, okay? So we want to lean into it. Neil Postman, he's a kind of a futurist, grabbed this challenge years ago, back in the 80s, and started to talk about it and write about it. And listen to his words. Technology must never be accepted as the natural order of things. Every technology is a product that carries with it a program, agenda, and philosophy that may or may not be life-enhancing, and therefore requires scrutiny, criticism, and control. And then look at this last line. We need to cultivate a suspicion of technology. He's just saying, be a little suspicious of it. Don't assume that it has your best interests in mind. We need to ask, what's the agenda? What promises does it make? And at what cost to our attention and our relationships and our flourishing life? So let's ask this question from a biblical framework, because that's what we do. We want to say, okay, what does this look like for us? And 2,000 years ago, did anyone have anything to say about cell phones and smartphones? Not quite, but totally applicable. We have The Apostle Paul, he's an early follower of Jesus. Many of you know his story. He had this vibrant conversion as he was going around persecuting Christians, arresting them, tearing their families apart, overseeing the death of one that we know of. And he had this conversion. He didn't meet Jesus in person. He had a spiritual encounter with Jesus Christ, resurrected from the dead. And that led to life transformation for him. And what he did with his life transformation was he began to travel the Mediterranean and start churches. Now, these wasn't like today, like in Boise or America, where you could drive through town and find a bunch of churches. There were none. There weren't any. People hadn't even heard of Jesus. There was no news to travel about him until Paul showed up and said, I know you're looking for the answer to the questions of life, and I can tell you who has them. His name is Jesus Christ. But he's not a man. He's God himself, resurrected from the dead. So Paul starts these churches. One of these churches in the city of Colossae, kind of a wild city that was very into like what's the latest, greatest thing, okay? And so as Paul writes to Colossae, it's the letter of Colossians in the New Testament, listen to his words, Colossians chapter 2, verses 6 to 8. It says, so then, he starts with a reality statement. So then, just as you received Christ Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. So that's the foundation. He says Jesus Christ has become the cornerstone of your life. He's the foundation of which you build on. There's two types of builders Jesus taught. There's those that build on the sand, and when the wind comes and the rain comes and the waters rise, the foundation washes away. And he says there's those that build on the rock. And when the wind comes and the rain comes, and the house stands strong. So Paul's speaking to this group of people who have become followers of Jesus, very much like many of you in this room. He says, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. And that is a phrase for the ages right there. We all should grab hold of that with two hands and go, that's part of the human existence. There's always an idea trying to take us captive. I'm offering ideas to take us captive. We're sorting out what is the truth. And Paul says, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of this world rather than on Christ. So there's these amazing things happening in Colossae. People are being introduced to Jesus. They're trusting him in their lives, and they're seeing their lives transformed. There's change. They're forgiving those who've wounded them. They're giving to those in need. They're living in the way of Jesus. However, some of them, as has always been the case, are being presented some better ideas to enrich the whole thing, make it better. It's called Gnosticism. Now, Gnosticism is not our issue right now. We're talking about digital detox. But there's definitely a parallel. Here's what Gnosticism was. It promised a full life through secret knowledge that you would unlock by special practices and rituals. So the Gnostics were saying, okay, it's great that you love Jesus, but do you know about the secret way to love Jesus? Because that's the real way. And if you don't do the real way, you might not even know him at all. And they were teaching this, and they were compelling. And people wanted to build their lives on something good, so they were drawn to it. And Paul's like, I got to tell y'all what it is. It's hollow and deceptive philosophy. A set of beliefs and practices that seemed promising, but were ultimately empty and misleading. So what happens is, underneath, get under the hood of Gnosticism. You take a look at what's going on in there, and which seems like this advanced, promising way for human flourishing, this good way to be in life in community. But Paul notes, I got under the hood, I looked at it, and it's just human tradition. It's always at the table, people trying to do best for people, and elemental spiritual forces. There is something working against you here at the deep foundations of the world that does not want you to encounter Christ and to live fully. Elemental spiritual forces. In other words, to simplify that, it's demonic schemes and a dangerous mix of human ideas. Well, let's look under the hood of technology then. And, I always put myself in your shoes. I do my best. And I'm like, gosh, what a downer, right? Happy New Year, everybody. Y'all dying with your phones. Have a great, so let's take a look under the hood of digital technology, of social media, of the apps that we use. What's its agenda? What promises is it making, and is it delivering on those promises? And what is the cost to those things? And my contention would be that when we look under the hood, we will find very quickly hollow and deceptive philosophies and spiritual workings that are just against you and your people and the people you love. And I'm going to just say data supports that. And what have we been talking about for over a decade now? From surgeon generals to educators and I actually think in the church we got to have this conversation. We have been talking about we're not okay. Like we're anxious and we're discouraged and we're lonely and our mental health is struggling. And everybody's saying there's one really, really overt solution, deal. And most of us are like, yeah, I need option B because I can't. My life depends on this Gnostic solution. Keep in mind, I'm not suggesting we all like get buggies and get rid of technology. And I mean, I've got a stack. I'm in this. So let's take a look and just kind of see what we will find. Well, Sean Parker, we're going to start with him. Sean Parker is an interesting guy. In 2017, he sat down with the Axios News Network, and you might know Sean Parker if you know Justin Timberlake and you watch The Social Network, because Justin Timberlake played Sean Parker in The Social Network. Here's who he is. He was the first president of Facebook. So we're going like way back, okay? First president of Facebook, but now he calls himself a conscientious objector to social media, which is what a large percentages of all the founders are doing right now. They're saying, no, we can't. We have to object in good conscience from what we have created. Here's a quote from him. He says, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. Now, I find this conversation is the most heated with parents and guardians. It shouldn't be. It's all of our challenge. It's not just the kids' challenge. It's everybody's challenge. And I think we short-circuit good conversation when we're just like, how are we going to deal with phones in our kids' pockets? Like that becomes the thing we amplify. How are we going to live in this digital age? All of us. Yes, students. Yes, adults. Yes, the retired lady who said, I hide in my phone instead of live my life. So he says, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. The thought process that went into creating these applications, the first president of Facebook, is this. How do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? The quote continues. He says, that means we need to give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever, and that would get you to engage more, to contribute more content. And that's going to get you to more likes and more comments. It's a social validation feedback loop. That's a phrase many of us are familiar with now. Exactly the kind of thing that a hacker like myself would come up with because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. And so he highlights that there's this promise in technology. It's fulfillment, it's connection, it's ease. But underneath, in my experience certainly, I think we find human and spiritual schemes that don't deliver on any of those in a way that's really worth the cost. So let's see how they're succeeding, okay? Data, it's fairly recent. The data's always got a margin of error to it, but if it's anywhere near close, okay? So let's just take a look at this. The average iPhone user touches their phone 2,617 times daily. Touches. Doesn't mean opens, looks at, just touches. Is it there? Is it there? Is it there, right? Like, it's in my pocket. Which pocket is it in? They touch it 2,617 times daily. That's an interesting data point, but it's the next one. We check our phones 144 times a day. 57% of Americans consider themselves addicted to their phones. Let's just do a quick visual, okay? This half of the room, would you all put a hand up in the air for me? Okay, this half of the room, no, put those hands nice and high for me. This is the visual of what that data point says. When you show up at church, this group, well, not this group, this many people are struggling with an addiction to their device. That right there, you can put your hands down. Thank you for your forthrightness about your addictions this morning. Everyone, I very much appreciate that. That means that as a church community, we got to care about this. Because the person we love or the people we're sitting next to might be saying, I need help. 89% check their phones within 10 minutes of waking up. There's a percentage of you that are very righteous and you check your phone to read your Bible and pray. Most of us, though, find ourselves very quickly into work email, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, find ourselves into a stream of thought that doesn't belong in our bedroom. On top of this, two-thirds of American adults agree that periodically unplugging or taking a digital detox would be good for their mental health. But less than a quarter even know how to try. So there's work for us. I'm super excited about these 4 weeks and this conversation that we have. Tristan Harris, who has got a fascinating job. He's a design ethicist and philosopher for Google, okay? What a job. Design ethicist and philosopher. Listen to how he says, okay, we have work to do. Every piece of social technology today is intentionally designed and engineered for distraction and addiction. He has a word for it, phone dope. Seth Godin, maybe a little more familiar to many of you, would say it this way. Your phone doesn't work for you. It works for Apple or Google. And we want to believe that we are the customer, but that's not the business model. We are the product, and what is being sold is both our data and privacy, but also our attention, and that's how they make money. Now, I think a lot of you know me. I'm not a Grinch, but I know it's kind of like this is the reality that we live in. And I would say I think we have an opportunity to define reality, which we're all doing in our personal lives. And we're trying to find tools and work through this, and we're thinking about our loved ones, and we have wonderful connections through our devices. We get to do FaceTime meals with people who aren't near us, and we get to learn wonderful things, but we also are drawn away and distracted. And I was just trying to figure out, like with my own kids in grades, I was talking to Emily last night, I go, I don't actually know how to know what his grades are. And we were kind of laughing at ourselves because I'll say to Anthony, he's probably in here somewhere, sorry Anthony, I rarely use him as an example. I'll be like, hey, I was on your Infinite campus and this is what your grade is. Like, that's not real, it's actually on Google Classroom. I'm like, well, wait, but I was told you're Infinite campus, and I go to Google Classroom, he's like, well, they haven't updated it yet. And you start to see the frustration that even in school life, especially there, just this challenge. So I want us to start this week and to consider how Paul says, well, the first church in Colossae should live. The churches in Treasure Valley who live in the digital age, what should we do? So then, just as you received Christ, Jesus as Lord, continue to live your lives in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. That's part A. That's the mission of Eastwind. Inspire one another to follow Jesus and deepen our faith and relationship with him. That's the first part. But then he says, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. And these are the first Christians. If the very first Christians were susceptible to this, I want to reject the idea of progress that says, I'm not, and realize it might be a human condition. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of this world, rather than on Christ. And technology is unique in this conversation. Obviously, he's known as an activist, but Martin Luther King Jr. was also a pastor, and he pastored congregations, and he taught. Listen to how he talked about technology, okay? He says, the great temptation of life and the great tragedy of life is that so often we allow the without of our lives to absorb the within of our lives. Just look at that sentence again. We allow the without of our lives to absorb the within of our lives. We have allowed our civilization to outrun our culture. And then he explains what he means specifically. We've allowed our technology to outdistance our theology. Technology is all about technique. We've gotten really, really, really good at technique, and yet we've lost the substance in the process. And for this reason, we find ourselves caught up with many problems. And when I read that, I'm like, is he talking about the phone cord being too short to get away? I'm like, what's he talking about right now? But he's ahead of his time and he sees it coming. So what do we do, right? How do we begin to be a discerning community? How do we look at I said we're not having a phone burning party. That's not the goal here. Okay, it's that we as a community could look at some practical steps for 4 weeks. I think this is I want to encourage you to a 4-week buy-in. Be like, 4 weeks, I'm going to walk it, I'm going to think it, I'm going to talk it. I just want to see, if you're new here, be new for 4 weeks. Then you can bounce. I think the 4 weeks will be good, all right? And the goal and the reason behind them is this: learn how to let our devices rest, going back to where we started, so we can be fully awake to God and others. So each week, I'm going to put a relational opportunity on the table and then a digital opportunity for us to reflect and think about. And this week's relational challenge is all about assessment. Just define the reality of your life. Assess the quality of your relationship with God, family, and church. And you may not have all of those relationships. Assess the quality of them. Where are you at? Why are you there? Assess that relationship. Think deeply about your faith. Deeply about, when I say family, network that out to roommates, friends, people like your family and church, your spiritual community. Do you have that? What does that look like for you? How much time do you spend developing these relationships? What changes do you want to make? Dee talked about small groups, and I was thinking about our life groups, and they're not perfect, but they are an attempt at being in community intentionally with a group of people. And the first service, he shared the open groups, and I was listening, and I went, boy, if you're a young couple or you're married, here's an opportunity for you. We have a lot of folks here who are professionals, early in their career, new to Boise, and this might be your church home, and you're going, I'm not in that bucket yet. If this is your church family, pause, send us a note, go, I'd love to talk about creating that space for somebody because I don't have it for myself. I'd love to step in and build the thing. Now, they're slowly growing and building, but every time we open a new one, it fills right up. Because if you assess and go, I need more spiritual community, where do you find it? Well, this is one of the ways, but this isn't the only way. And then there's relational challenge, part one. Digital challenge is part two. This week's spy on your screen activity. Computer, phone, your iPad, podcasts, video games, TV, music, the whole bucket. Take notice of why you go to your screen. I've got a very real challenge for most of you. Sorry, this is very medical. Go to the bathroom without your phone for the week. Okay, I'll just leave that right there. So take notice of why you go to a screen. Take notice of how much time you spend on a screen, and then ask yourself, why? What need or desire is this fulfilling in my life? And is it delivering? Get under the hood. Is it delivering what it promised? Where can I instead find life in relationships with God and with others and with myself? Now, and part of this I'm really excited about is next week, and this is way undershoot, but next week after the sermon, we're going to invite all of you to a 1-week digital fast. Now, there's instructions on the digital fast in your message notes. They're also on the pub table, and you can go to eastern.life and grab them. But it'll be next week after the sermon. For 1 week, we as a community, so the 500-plus people that'll be here on a Sunday, folks who join us online, the people who watch later or do the podcast, we can all come together and go for 1 week, and it's not an overtly spiritual practice. It's just like we're going to do this practical exercise in fasting from technology and just see. It's 1 week. Was it worth it? Could I live? Was I shaking? Did I need a hit of phone dope? What do I do? So next week, just wanted to prepare you. So next week, you're like, I'm ready, instead of being like, oh, okay, 1 week, digital fast. I want to end, before we share communion and sing together, by putting the relational question back up there. Just invite you to think about this for a moment. Make it a conversation with God. Make it the beginning of a really genuine reflection with yourself all week. And we'll be back in a moment.
I wanna know you're real. I wanna feel some kind of change. Even the smallest spark. Just something to keep me sane. Won't you whisper your love to me one more time? Oh, Lord, let me know that this road is still right. Won't you